How long was that stretch when it hit you and then when you left?
60 days.
Wow, Arthur. Welcome to the Evolve Voices podcast, a platform to hear the fascinating stories behind the people that power global commerce. I'm Edilsa, a brand advisor, and your US host of Evolve Voices. Building a business is not for everyone, especially when you're starting from scratch, figuring out not just the idea, but how to turn it into a real company and whether you're even built for the journey. Today, we hear from my Penn classmate, Arthur Gardner Smith, who launched his professional hair care line, Reformation Hair, just 2 years ago. He talks about knowing when it was time to leave corporate, navigating the first 6 months of absolute chaos, making every decision, brand colors, incorporation, figuring out his schedule, his workflow, and above all, the people like his husband, EJ, who held him up when that dream felt heavy. But we start with, of all things, a hair moment from college. Arthur kept his hair short because it felt professional. I kept mine in a bun because I didn't really know how to style it. We didn't feel empowered in our hair then. And honestly, these are the small moments that matter, the ones that spark movements, even if it's just how you wore your hair that day. Let's get into it. Hello, Arthur Gardner Smith here on Evolve Voices. I am so excited. Like, so many people here will know you as the now founder of Reformation Hair.
Yeah.
But I know you as our student body president from Penn. Can you believe it that it's now, I won't age us actually. I won't say how many years.
Don't say the number.
I won't say the number. Look, we still look great.
We do.
I think back to Penn at the beginning, and for me, at least, I don't know how you identified with your hair, Arthur, but hair journey. Like okay, you guys see my curls here. They're, Arthur's about to make them even better. And healthier. But these took some time to do and some time to love. I used to just put my hair up in a bun, frizz all up in the front because I didn't know what to do with it. It was easier just to not do anything with my hair. I always think about that part of my journey. I was trying to more hide it than show it because I didn't know like what to do with it. What was your hair journey like back then?
Oh my God. Well, Dilsa, if I take you all the way back to that unnamed number, I was bald then, right? I didn't have a lick of hair on my head. And that was for a lot of reasons. I actually just liked bald, and it probably favored me to be bald when I was under 21 and I looked older than I actually was. But it was also this like uncharted territory. I have always been fascinated with hair, but like a lot of little black boys, I mean, we had our hair cut to a millimeter. So I didn't even know what my hair looked like, for the first 18, 20 some years of life until I, grew it out, so there was this, obviously, I think a little bit of a dogma around what clean kept meant. And I think for a lot of us, having really, really short hair was synonymous with being clean kept. And so, and it wasn't professional per se to have, super long hair. And so I just didn't know what it could do, what it looked like, all of those things. But it's interesting though. Right? So I went from something that was uncharted territory to really thinking about hair in its like unlimited possibilities. I think as I went on my own journey of doing everything under the sun to my hair, I have chemically treated it. I've thermally heated it at some point. I've had wavy hair, short hair, long hair, the whole nine.
I've seen it.
A lot.
Yeah.
What I've learned is this, hair informs so much of how we are able to present and how we choose to present ourselves to the world, right? And I think for, I'm going to say women, but when I say women, I really do mean people, but women with textured hair, my goal was to give them something that offered the ultimate in control, in manageability, and freedom of expression.
I love it because one thing that's what stuck with me when we were having that conversation is I don't want to give up my curly hair. I also love when my hair is straight. I feel like I get to live in two worlds. And you talked about what people associated with. For me, associated hair with professional was straight. I straightened my hair a lot in college. I straightened my hair a lot in the first few years of corporate. And that was because I was told in, I won't say the leadership program that I was part of, but the leadership program was like the one who was teaching me the ways of being professional. And they were like, straight hair is just more professional when you go. And I was always marked by that experience that my hair as is wasn't professional. Yeah. And how, like what you're born with, that you're just like, wait, it's not how I should carry myself. And so the beauty of now almost kind of now straight doesn't have that connotation to me. It's just variety.
That's
right. So I like having variety in hair, and I'm blessed to have that with my hair texture. So I love that you're creating this nimbleness to go between both. Are you going between both, or are you keeping this hairstyle like most?
I'm not using my product yet. I do go between both. My hair is not chemically treated, so I use a lot of heat to get my hair like.
Dude, your hair is not chemically treated at all?
No, it used to be. So I went natural probably a year ago. When I went on this journey with the company, I'm like, well, okay, I shouldn't be putting all these chemicals on my hair. One, because I understand the adverse effect of them. But beyond that, I wanted to make sure that I'm the first customer, right? So I wanted to make sure that my hair was in position where we could begin to test my curly strands to understand the effectiveness of the system that we're building. So wow. I've been chemical free for a while, and I love it. I think you said it right. This is about agility. Beyond safety, it's about agility. Yeah. And, we always say around here, your texture, your way, right? I think for our business, our aspiration really is to unlock the full potential of what your hair texture can do. In its natural state, many of our textures defy gravity, which is incredible, right? But there's a whole range of what your hair can do if it can defy gravity. And our goal is to be able to unlock that so that you have more, good hair days that you can bank on, whether you choose to keep your hair curly or if you choose to release that curl and make it straight.
You also know what you said there, which is you're doing like a year without chemically straightening your hair. You're testing things. That was something you were not brave to do when you were at Penn, right? You're just like, I'm keeping my hair short. I don't know what's under there. Like, what could happen? What would you tell that young boy now? I'm just thinking of myself in college. Would I still do it? Would I have decided, hey, I'm just going to take this year to see what my hair could do,
Yeah. I mean, he'd be the little boy in me would have been very excited. It was like a secret passion, right? That I didn't have an outlet for because, as little black boys, we were, you play with G.I. Joes and Legos and yada, yada. And the finite set of toys and things that were pushed for me to be interested in didn't naturally interest me, right? And hair was always that secret fascination that I got to indulge with my mom. But all that said, it's playing it forward. This is just something where I'm finally, living in the thing that I've always loved, and then being able to give back to so many people that look just like me, and the women, that birthed me, that will be able to take advantage of a novel system that really gives them greater freedom of control and expression.
Yeah. But I think we didn't have that freedom of expression when we started in corporate. Remember, you started at Goldman, I believe. I was also another investment banker at Deutsche Bank. And in corporate, I defined that success as there were a few things we came out of Wharton. Were you a banker or were you a consultant? What company did you work for? Were you at Goldman? Were you at Morgan? Were you at Bain, McKinsey? Did you get that coveted internship? Like going in, list it. Yeah. So a lot of it's status. Was that how you felt also coming out, like as you were in that last year of Penn or the last few years?
Yeah. I mean, you nailed it. It was the prestige of the brand. It was as I grew in the company, it was my remit. It was the, revenue responsibility that I had. I was upwardly mobile. Right. And so being able to climb that ladder, to do so quickly, and to have an informal network of sponsors that understood and knew to advocate for me in rooms that I was not in. I had all of those things, right? I mean, that's what defined, success for me. In addition to how much I got paid, that was very, very important.
That's nice.
Right? That those were the other pieces, Edilsa, that defined success for me.
I almost thought of it for other people as like I had blinders on. This was all like I was very focused on. Everything was next step. We were master networkers and we were trained. You talked about building a network of sponsors. Like what is one thing you lived by to get those sponsors?
I was really big on cultivating relationship. I mean, I've always kind of been that person, and so I took that same skill, that lifelong skill, into the corporate arena as well. And it's probably one of the first things that I did was try to find a group of sponsors, and it was really organic in terms of how I found them. But in doing so, I think I was probably covering for some things. I had this reputation when I was working on Wall Street, but they would call me the managing analyst, right? I wasn't an MD. I wasn't a managing director, but I was a managing analyst. And the joke was, technically, he's not nearly as strong, but man, from a relationship perspective, I mean, he has the chops of what we'd want in an MD. He can sell. He understands this business, but he's not trying to spend all day in a spreadsheet, right? So that was my reputation back then. But nonetheless, being a managing analyst, as I was so titled, it brought some incredible relationships throughout the firm, and I took that in every company that I worked with.
I think that's such an invaluable lesson, is that people kind of see both as like, Arthur, you have tremendous aptitude. So even when Arthur says that he's technically not strong enough, it is all above the bar. But sometimes people equate the two, and then they think you have to be technically strong and then you build the network on it.
Right.
But how important networking is, regardless of whether it's your field or not, to make those connections, to learn and to live. But one thing I'm hearing is success was almost given to you. We'll talk about how success became purpose, right? But who gave that to you? For me, I remember it was from high school. I went to boarding school. I got a scholarship to boarding school. So everything was prestige, prestige, prestige after. Where did that come from for you?
It's interesting. I'm going to take you back. It probably came from my dad.
Yeah.
My dad is now a retired 40-year entrepreneur. And I remember, he would take me into his office on weekends sometimes. And when I walked into his office, I was looking at a man who I looked like, and I saw how accomplished he was. There were awards and certificates, that decked the entire office out. And I was reminded in ways that I didn't have words for now, or words for then, that there was this unlimited possibility in front of me. If Dad could do it, certainly you could too. And so he didn't know it at the time, but I was walking in his office, not only proud of him, but feeling like I could do anything, because if my dad could do it, surely I could as well. And so that formula for success was really more visual than anything. It was immersive.
Oh my God, that's beautiful.
Because I saw him as an entrepreneur knocking it out of the park, being recognized by the community in which we lived in, and thinking to myself, I want to be as great as my dad. That's where it came from.
Okay, the metaphor of somebody looking like you being what drove you, and now you're trying to have more people see themselves through your hair brand is so beautiful, Arthur. It's just like so great. And it just also took me back to myself, because boarding school was the seminal experience for it. But for me, obviously, it all comes from my brother was handicapped. So it always felt like I needed to be perfect,
Yes.
And so so it always comes from, it's always rooted in something deeply ingrained in what we grow up in, our surroundings, and how we kind of grow around it. I wouldn't say grow above it, but grow around it and kind of learn then who we are, not just who we are defined as in relation to other people, is really important.
Listening to him talk about his dad, I kept thinking about where that instinct to achieve success comes from. For some of us, it's inherited. For me, I realized it was deeper than boarding school. It was because of my brother. Watching him navigate daily challenges, I felt like I had to be perfect. triple checking every assignment, every presentation, trying to control the chaos around me. Even now, I'm still unpacking why I chase success the way I do. Maybe you feel it too, that push, that pressure, that hunger.
And it changes, right? I think as you ask me some of these questions, right, there was a marker for success that I had as a kid that as I grew up, Edilsa, it began to change in a way that was unknown to me in the present time. I'd had to look back and realize, your marker for what matters shifted. Why did it shift? And to your point earlier, right? You go to a place like Wharton, and I did Wharton and then HBS. It points to Wall Street. It points to consulting. And I got good at becoming, at owning the script that was needed to be successful in those spaces. It was like my first job really was being an actor, right? And hear the lines that you need to be able to, spit out and nail, on this cue, on this mark. And if you can do that, you can be successful. And I got good at doing that, but it wasn't me. It was a caricature of myself, right? And, I wanted to be really, really intent on understanding how I could, reframe my success and also choose to put away the markers of success that no longer matter to me. I was highly visible. I was on everybody's succession plan. But Edilsa, if I had to be very honest with you, in climbing the ranks through a Fortune 500 company, I could not have been more disengaged towards the end because I wasn't passionate about what I was doing. I had never, in everything that I named, passion was not a marker of success for the longest time.
Wow.
And so that wasn't a part of my equation, and it needed to have been there. I was no longer feeling successful, even though I checked the box on every other marker of how I would have defined success previously.
I think it's also because the markers start to become less. You cross them off. And so you're on the succession plan, same as I was feeling. And then you're just, but do I want to be part of that succession plan? And that's almost kind of a crisis in and of itself. Yeah. It's like, oh my God, I've met all these markers. Why am I not satisfied? Yeah. And it's because, to your point, the passion equation is missing, and you found it. You've written about your mom, your aunts, you talked about before, being affected by chemical relaxers. I was too. I remember I stopped relaxing my hair. I was maybe 16. That was the last time that I relaxed my hair. Mm-hmm. And it absolutely killed my hair. Like I literally remember strands breaking, and I was like, Mom, I think when I straighten my hair as is, I'll either use it curly or just straighten every so often. But I remember it burning my scalp, and it not having the desire. I had half straight, half curly. Oh, yeah. And so also was okay, so I just burned my scalp and I'm not even seeing the result. Was that what your mom and your aunts were seeing with the industry? Is that what they told you?
Yeah, I mean, it's my mom and her lovely 4 sisters. So there's 5 girls on my mom's
4
side.
4 sisters.
Yeah, five girls total. Their story really is the reason why I did this, right? I mean, mm-hmm. These were women with full manes of hair, still have them, but they were no stranger to chemical relaxers, mm-hmm. and they experienced everything you named, from hair loss to scalp lesions, to hair damage, inconsistent results. I mean, their story paralleled a lot of women. And in the worst case scenario, they also suffered through some type of endocrine disruption, right? So your endocrine system is known to regulate your hormone balance.
Yep.
And when your hormone balance is thrown off, you can face a lot of adverse effects. So, interestingly enough, I'll tie where I'm going to go with your question about, purpose and success and whatnot. But around the time that I was itching to leave, I saw these headlines that began to make their rounds. This is about January of 2024. And these headlines began to finally suggest and document that the active ingredients in traditional chemical straighteners were now classified as endocrine disrupting chemicals, right? There was a study that was put out by the National Institute of Health that not only classified them as endocrine disrupting chemicals, but showed that they increased the likelihood of uterine cancer. And so for many women that had been exposed to endocrine disrupting chemicals, whether in hair products or other consumer products, it can lead to uterine fibroids, so an overgrowth of tissue in the uterine lining. Yep. And in the worst case scenario, and by the way, the fibroids create their own series of health complications, but in the worst case scenario, uterine cancer. And luckily, none of my mom or her sisters, suffered through uterine cancer. But they did have to part ways with their reproductive system. And that's the case for a lot of women where they've had some type of endocrine disruption and exposure to these type of chemicals, and they've lost their reproductive organs, which is incredibly sad. And it happened over time, so disparate that it was difficult to weave it all together until you look back, hindsight being 2020, and saying, wow, everyone has lost their reproductive organs. What caused that? So do we know, Edilsa, that getting their hair relaxed for 30 plus years caused this, that it was directly the culprit? No. We do know that they faced some type of endocrine disruption. They had exposure, and this was an input, right? Yeah. And so when I read these headlines, my goal was let's remove a major input. Let's take this away. And the feeling for me was like, I didn't know how to feel. I'm frustrated. Yes. I got one mama. I want to keep her well as long as I can. And, but it lit a fire for me to figure out how to do something differently. Why had this industry cut so many corners that compromised not only people's hair, but it compromised their well-being? There had to be an alternative, right? And it sent me on this hunt to go figure that out.
Was that the moment for you where you were just like, I need to change this? Or was there a conversation with your mom and your aunt that you were like, what was that moment that you couldn't unsee it?
It was all of the above.
Yeah.
And it happened so rapidly. So let me go back, right?
Yeah.
I remember, I was at this point where I was ready to leave. And I knew this because purpose had not been a part of my equation. I made a promise to myself. If I ever stumbled upon my purpose, or if it hit me in the face, I was going to pursue it with everything that I had within me. To no end, I was going to pursue it. And so when I saw these headlines, I was pretty quick to move. I knew that this was what I was going to go do, right? I didn't have to have everything figured out. It was sufficient information for me to know that this was my calling, that my life's work was tied to solving for this issue, and beyond solving for it, creating something novel, much better, right? I mean, I'm an innovation leader by trade, right? So my bread and butter is all about, looking in uncharted white spaces and creating novel solutions and pushing boundaries and pushing limits. That's all I needed, right? As a visionary and a futurist, this is what you need in order to kind of step out. But I remember, Edilsa, I was working at the time, and when I read the headlines, and it became very, very quick. I had a few conversations with my mom and said, "Hey, have you read these headlines?" And I talked to her sisters about it, and I think everyone was in sort of a state of shock. Like, I thought it was something related to what I was putting in my head, and wow, I didn't know. And it's a gripping moment when you are having to confront realities that were hidden. And so, for me, I went on a path to begin to think about how to unwind, my current role so that I could really begin to step into this. As you could imagine, moving into your future, looking back at your past, I couldn't serve two masters, right? So I think part of this was really trying to get that balance right as I began to really drive into this next step.
How long was that overlap? Like when you were, I did not have any overlap, and I'll tell you why. It's not because I think it's the smartest thing. You know, you have a little bit of transition period before, but I felt like I knew that my markers were incorrect, but I didn't know what it was. And so I had to leave Amazon, and I was just like, I'm done. I need to take a year off. And so it was the year, being able to think of it on a fresh head of like, what is it that was driving me and gave me purpose, and what made and for you, it kind of hit you while you were in corporate, which is I think sometimes good in the sense that you have still some stability as you're getting out. What was it like? How long was that stretch first that you were when it hit you, and then when you left?
60 days.
Wow, Arthur, go! Wow.
And let me say this too, right? I had a lot of things that were working in my favor. One, I had saved up my coffers to be able to transition when the time was right. And I have an incredibly supportive husband that was pushing me to say, you got to go do something different. But don't you want me to take on this president role? Don't you want me to go, do this? He's like, no, because you're not happy in it. And you can't well serve that company if you're not happy. You can't do them justice. You can't do yourself justice if you're through all your layers, you're really not happy at your core. And so, we oftentimes talk about, well, what did you really need to know in order for it to be real? I looked at enough precedent research, right, on the effect that protein could have on hair to know that it was real. And that was within 7 days of my 60. And I made a really concerted effort then to say, okay, how can I honor all the pieces that are at play? How can I honor the past, which I'm transitioning out of? How can I honor the future that I'm looking to birth? And I think part of it was, one, putting a stake in the ground, which was the 60 days, setting that transition period. And I think the most joyous thing that I allowed for was allowing the junior talent to rise up in the organization, right? And sort of setting a course for that to happen, so that I can go out and do what I was purposed to do. But, I did not want to compromise the future that I was building, with the past that I was ready to leave behind. So I let it go quickly, and responsibly as I could.
What did your days look like in that period when you were, it sounds like you were doing that transitioning plan and helping your company just be in a better way after you left. Mm-hmm. But were you then picking up afterwards and starting to do research on your own company, or did you decide, let me do these 60 days and after these 60 days I can go full bore?
Yeah. The 60 days was, I'm ready to go do this next thing, but let me do the decency of transitioning things properly. And so I was pounding the pavement on how to transition out of the organization and help new talent to move up within the organization. And then I was full bore this next assignment. So it was an interesting transition, leaving the company, and then, my days were different altogether after that.
Yeah. The first Monday, I always say the first Monday is the most shocking. It's like, there's no Slack ringing. There's no meetings. What did that first Monday feel like for you after leaving it?
Everyone thinks you just feel so free. And I'll be honest with you. That's what I had in the back of my mind is, I cannot wait for that Monday to come. I can sleep in. There's nothing that I have to go do. I won't have to answer to anybody. But all the things that define success for you really begin to creep in again. And they're good things, right? But all that said, on that first Monday, freedom did not happen instantaneously. There were some old ways of thinking that I needed to part ways with. Mm-hmm. And I think the first one was not understanding that my mind needed rest.
Oh my God, yeah.
It was frankly in the rest that the roadmap for the business became quite clear. And there was some muscle that I needed to build around that, right? Because we get praised so often for how much rest we don't take. I pulled an all-nighter, XYZ in order to get this thing done. I didn't sleep a lick. We get praised for those things. And I had to learn how to take stock in rest, really understanding that my best work came from stillness, where I could tune into the voice that was mapping, the blueprint of success for the business, right? I would sometimes, that first week, I remember, I would keep a pen and paper next to the bed because literally in the middle of the night, ideas would come to me. I'd have to write them down right away. I didn't want to lose it, right? So that first period really was about understanding how to part ways with some dogma around rest and stillness that were really necessary for me to get the business moving forward. I'd also say this too. This was it was a real test of patience, right? Because the full vision for what Reformation is and hopefully will be, it didn't crystallize right away. And that took about, another 3 months for it to really come together. And that 3 months felt like an eternity for someone that wants to move quickly.
That was actually going to be my question. And I want to almost start from the 6 months back. So at the end of those 6 months, what had you, I hate to use the word accomplish because we put ourselves back into the achievement bucket. But in the first 6 months, had you created a business plan? Was that your marker at the end that you were like, okay, like at the end of the 6 months, I want to have done X. And then how did you get there? Because I feel like one of the things as I started my own consulting business is the playbook wasn't there. I knew the playbook for being an investment banker. I did not know the playbook for building a business or a company or a service, right? And a lot of it was a lot more research than I thought. A lot of, like sourcing and understanding what tools that I was going to be using, what I wasn't. So like from the day that you quit or resigned to the 6 months, what had been done?
It's a great question. So I took a lot of turns, right? I knew that I wanted to do something within hair. I had obviously had the headlines around how damaging these chemical ingredients are to women with textured hair. But there are a number of different plays within the hair care space that I was looking at.
Right.
What happened, however, 6 months then, I ended up going to a trade show. And to be registered at that trade show, you had to have a business. You were either, an exhibitor or you were a business that was participating at the trade show. So that really forced me to make a choice. Number one, it was like, you need a website. Okay, let me go make that happen. What do you do? Well, let me spell out what it is that Reformation does. You need a brand name, right? So a lot of things kind of just came together because there was an impetus to say, okay, if you're going to be in this space, we're recognizing you, Arthur, as an entity. What is your entity? And so I think I began to kind of take all of the learnings around the precedent research, and then, began to kind of create a formal structure around it. Right. I didn't have much at that point in time other than an idea and, a couple conversations that were in flight that solidified the science behind, the vision that I began to map out. But at 6 months, we were incorporated. Right. And from there, that was sort of like, okay, let's get everything else together.
Wow. And that in and of itself, I don't know if anyone else has been, I was building an LLC. I don't know if you did an S Corp, whatever, but oh my God, there's so many steps to this thing, so many steps
along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you file it wrong and then you're just like, okay, I need a free file. And, what state are you going to do it in? Right. There's all these questions micro decisions you have to make along the way. Yeah. How did you even find out about the trade show? Somebody who's going in and they're just like, is a trade show like my first thing that I should go to? Like, was that because of your previous history? You kind of knew that was maybe something you should be doing?
Yeah. A good friend told me about this particular trade show, but I knew that I needed to go there. I mean, in the previous company that I worked for, we talked about going to Gemba, going to the place of impact, meeting the customers, understanding the entire supply chain. No better place to do that than at a trade show. And so it was pretty deliberate in terms of why I chose, that particular format to do some learning. I'd say the most interesting thing that came out of it, we talk about all these decisions to make, right? As an aside, we were Reformation Haircare, a California LLC, quickly dissolved that, became Reformation Hair Corp, a Delaware C Corp, afterwards. But all that said, I remember going to that trade show, and of all the things that I needed to, define myself as an entity, I was not sure if we were going to be a professional grade solution or something that you'd find, in the retail channel. I left that trade show very clear that this was going to be a professional grade brand where we were empowering and elevating the stylists with new tools they could add to their toolkit. That was really, really important to me coming out of the trade show. And I think, it helped me to make more concrete decisions with better conviction because I was anchoring myself in the customer that I was looking to serve.
Yeah. And you talked about the end of the 6 months, you were a C Corp Delaware, professional grade, trade show being a marker for those kind of micro decisions you need to make. But you also talked about rest at the beginning. I want to talk about that. How much time did you give yourself to rest before you kind of went to this trade show and then things started spiraling?
So it's funny if I take you back to it, right? Yeah. This is still post COVID, and there wasn't this big back to work, or I guess the back to work mandate was coming more into effect. It was beginning to solidify. But all that said, my husband was also my coworker, different company, but we'd meet in the kitchen. That was our sort of like powwow, if you will, in between.
That's my brother for me. Yeah, it's great. Yeah.
Right. So that was our little meetup, right? Between calls, we meet in the kitchen and grab a coffee and that kind of thing. All that said, I had fallen out of my rhythm, and while he's busy working and I can hear every single call that he's on, I'm feeling guilty about needing to rest, but also not knowing how to, and then choosing to, and it was a lot, right? And you think, oh man, just take a break. You can, this is what you've earned. But it was hard to give myself that permission. It was really anchored in, I don't feel like I'm being as productive as I could be, when the reality is the rest was not, it wasn't just important. It was an imperative to being where we are now.
Oh yeah, Arthur. For me, it was literally a month after, I left. I had to meet with a career coach. I obviously had to figure out what was my next step. And in that call with a career coach, she was a Puerto Rican woman. She was like, Edilsa, I need you to shut this phone call. Mm-hmm. You need to get off this phone.
Yep.
You need to give yourself permission as a first generation immigrant to take rest. Mm-hmm. And it was like somebody gave me the keys to actually resting.
That's right.
But I couldn't because I hadn't been trained to value it. Mm-hmm. It was something that we were just thought, how much can we grind? That was our effort of our metric of success.
That's right.
That's right. So I love that your husband was so important in that journey.
Now, this is the part no one talks about. The reality behind hustle culture. Studies show 61% of workers feel their workplace reward long hours over efficiency. Sleep deprivation is worn as a badge of honor. 80% of founders admit they see sleep as a luxury. 2/3 proud of 12-hour workdays. Even when burnout hits, 90% of workplaces don't formally address it. Arthur's journey reminds us, most of us aren't wired for that pace. We aren't built for that pace. And that's okay. Maybe it's time to pause, to step back, to realize that rest isn't weakness. It's part of your playbook. Imagine what could change if you actually slept that extra hour, if you said no to that one extra call, if you just breathed.
That's just so invaluable. And as what about your schedule? I think that was one thing that tripped me up. I was like, how do I make a schedule without having a team, without having vendors to meet? Did that become a journey of its own too?
It's interesting. Every day looked different. I actually enjoyed the variety that it offered. I enjoyed that my Tuesday looked nothing like my last last Tuesday. And, there's a rhythm now. We're what, a year and some change, or almost 2 years in, to this journey. And, so there's a rhythm now that didn't exist, in the infancy of the business. But I enjoyed that. I mean, at first it was, I got to sit down all day and I got to create the brand name. I got to think about the visuals that would evoke, new words around how we talked about hair, flow, ease, and movement. Those aren't words that we typically associate with textured hair, but I got to create a brand that, widened the aperture around how we thought about hair and talked about it. So my schedule, flowed. It was some days just kind of spit in the clouds, thinking about the brand that she wanted to make. And then there were some other administrative things that I had to go do as well. And learning a whole new set of tools, enterprise tools that I'd be using at a much smaller scale to get the business off the ground.
Did you, wake up like being, okay, this is my next step, or did you still live and breathe by your calendar?
No, my calendar changed quite a bit. My calendar as a executive in my previous company, I was taking calls to approve, a certain stream of work, right? I had 4 layers that were underneath me.
Sure.
And so by the time information came up to me, it was, we needed a decision on something. Yeah. We needed guidance on how to go do something, but I inverted that, right? And so my schedule now is about me executing. There was no one to report into above me. I think that was sort of the biggest shock, I'd say, within this first 2-year period was, I didn't have to ask for permission anymore. All the same, I was just as humbled by the responsibility of not having to ask.
Yep.
Right. And I think, Edilsa, you got to be incredibly principled and incredibly disciplined. And that's not defined by your calendar, your schedule, because it's the factor that allows you to not stumble in areas where permission was often needed.
Mm-hmm. Oh, got to do the snaps. Got to do the snaps there. I think one thing that permission, probably, you set it up very early, and I actually want to bring it back because I think it's really important. Mm-hmm. You had taken time to make sure your coffers were right before this. I did the same thing. Yeah. And so that, would you say that's the most invaluable thing before somebody is about to build something on their own, maybe entrepreneur curious in corporate?
I think if you unpack it, right? Mm-hmm. The answer is no for me. But if I unpack that further, you'd have to kind of like ask yourself, like, what's the thing that is holding you back? So if you're curious about going down this path as an entrepreneur, I would ask someone, whether it's a paycheck or something else, what's the biggest fear of yours that's preventing you from leaving and doing the thing that you're called to do? And as you evaluate that fear or even set of fears, are they real or are they manufactured? Right? Yeah. Oh. You can't have a conversation with me without me talking about my faith. So,
as you should.
For me, Edilsa, I would have that conversation with, someone curious about entrepreneurship. And for me, I would point them back to the truth of God's word that reminds us so much about his assurances and his provision, really in any moment of uncertainty. So there's this scripture in Matthew. I think it's like Matthew 6:26.
I was just about to ask you where in the scripture. Yeah.
Matthew 6:26. Okay. Let me see if I can find it.
Yes.
Read it. So Matthew writes, "Look at the birds of the air. They neither sow, they neither reap nor gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not more valuable than they are?" Right? So I remember as I was making this decision and thinking about taking the plunge, right? That scripture came to mind, and to myself and to the next entrepreneur, if that person is operating in God's purpose for them, they will have everything they need at the appointed time. And my experience in entrepreneurship has been a real testament to that. There were so many decisions and milestones, frankly, that we've been able to achieve that I couldn't have mapped out at the beginning, but they came at the appointed time. We closed our first round of capital. We now have proof of concept, a treatment that can deliver superior straightening results as compared to traditional straighteners while still preserving the integrity of the hair. We're in discussions with major retail brands around a partnership that will help us to accelerate our R&D. And we have this incredible community of celebrity hairstylists that have joined us. Oprah's hairstylist, Nicole Mangrum, Michelle Obama's former hairstylist, Johnny Wright, Beyonce's hairstylist, Kim Kimball, and Gabrielle Union's hairstylist, Larry Sims. They've all joined the team. But again, I go back to Blueprint. Those things came in time, and I could not have mapped that out day one when I was reading those headlines. Who needed to be on board? What does a real proof of concept begin to look like? What partnerships will you need to have in order to be successful in this space? At their appointed time, they all came. And so I really had to anchor myself in that scripture. If God cares about the birds, right, that don't have to store up their own food and yet they're still well fed, and he made us higher in the hierarchy of things that matter.
More is to be had for us,
right? I mean, how much more does he care about what your dreams are and being able to actualize them and living in his purpose? And so it's been a big anchor for me, and I would offer that to any entrepreneur that's curious about taking this plunge.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about milestones, but it's more of living in your purpose, right? And just and then realizing that somebody has your back, and it almost goes back to one question that I was going to have for you is do you think that everyone in corporate is built to be a founder or an entrepreneur? Is because in my that purpose question of what your faith can tend to you, what is it? It might actually just be faith can tend to your rise in corporate and what you can be, or it might be in this new journey of founder, entrepreneur. For somebody gut checking themselves, whether it's by faith, whether they have their coffers. Do you think everyone is meant for this journey now, having been in it 2 years in?
I don't think that everyone is meant for this journey. And that's not intended to discourage anyone.
No.
I think part of the equation is this, and I won't be exhaustive around this, but some things that just quickly come to mind. I don't know how you do this without passion. So if you don't have a passion around this, I would not implore you to do it. I don't know how you do this without passion, number one. There's a certain risk appetite that you just have to be comfortable with in order to go do this. So whether you have coffers or not, even in having your coffers stacked, there's still a runway. There's still an end date. Things don't work out. You still have to have a pretty incredible risk appetite to go about this journey. You got to have thick skin. I mean, I've been told no 1,000 times over, and there's more no's that are coming my way. But I also can anticipate and center my hope in the yes that's right for the business. So hearing no can be hard, very, very hard. And I'd say the last piece too is you gotta have incredible discernment, particularly as you continue to put points on the board. Some of the folks that told you no in the beginning may change their mind and say yes, and then the ball's in your court to determine if their dollar is the right dollar. I think for every decision that you make around the business, being able to quickly understand if it's the right thing or the quickest thing, you have to have a barometer for those kind of things. That's the makeup of what qualifies a good founder in my book. And that's just a few things, right? But all that to say that, those are some critical essentials for me that I think defines what enables someone to be successful as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. you talked about how you're getting a lot, you're expecting a lot of no's because that is part of our journey here. What's the yes you're most excited for that's coming up in the next few months, if you can share?
Yeah. No, I can. For many founders at my stage, we wake up every day thinking about money, how much we either don't have or how much we'd like to have. The biggest yes that matters to me is not about an investor coming on board. Not telling them no, but the biggest yes is about our target customer, our intended customer, looking at our results and saying, "That's fascinating. I don't have to compromise my health. I don't have to compromise my hair, and I get to go do something different with my hair." That's still a reflection of me. It's not an altered version of me. Not someone else's hair. It is mine. I'm looking forward to getting that stamp of approval, or continuing to get that stamp of approval from our core customer. That's what matters to me most.
Oh, well, I can't wait to be a customer. I'm waiting to try the protein on my hair so I can go I straightened my hair for the first time in maybe a year last week, and it was so interesting. Just I had 2 people blow drying my hair because they thought it was so complicated. At first, they were so daunted, and then they couldn't believe how quickly my hair got silky. And so it's just also like the understanding of my hair, to have somebody truly understand how it's being worked on, and for others too who are curious, who want to grow in their understanding, also to know, and something like this being, a solve to educate also other people about, it's not that daunting. Our hair is different, but it's not hard, And as we close, I wanted to ask you a fun question.
Okay. All right.
If your, 2010 student body president self could see you now.
You're funny.
What would you tell them? Like, what would you be most surprised with? Like, what would shock you? Like, if somebody had told me that I'd be an entrepreneur, I would laugh in their face. I don't know what the equivalent of it would be for you.
I like that. Okay, well, one, I would definitely be surprised that I'm in LA of all places.
Oh my God.
I was such a fan of being on the East Coast, from New York, Philadelphia, Boston, even I'll call Atlanta the East Coast as well. I love the East Coast so much. I would have been most surprised about that. But, so much has changed between now and then. And I heard that you called out the number of our graduation day.
Fudge. Everyone forget that. Everyone forget it.
but a lot changed within these last 15 years, right? So I'll say this, right? I once wrestled with identity to now being someone that sees myself the way that God sees me. I would be surprised then, and I say grateful now, that I broke away from so much of the dogma that I had internalized. The first one being that all careers worth talking about coming out of Wharton or HBS point to consulting or Wall Street. I would be grateful that I took this entrepreneurial plunge that paralleled my father's. Grateful that my career in some ways emulated his. And the last one is this. Oprah once said this about her own career. She said, I think she was talking to Barbara Walters, don't quote me on that, but she said, I feel like I'm living in God's dream for me. I now know what that feels like. I now know what that feels like. I've experienced that, having taken this leap, if you will, into entrepreneurship. Those are the things that I'd be surprised about, but also grateful for. I mean, this entire moment, right? It really is an accumulation of skills and experiences that I've collected over the years. And I'm grateful that they can be used to build a type of company and a brand that will forever transform haircare as we know it. A brand where safety is the baseline, those hidden health risks, they're eliminated, and superior performance is not only the expectation, it's the standard.
Oh, so much living in God's dream. Wow, that is so beautiful. I want to thank you so much for one being here, but for wanting to solve this problem, to help us kind of, I think you said, be all the versions of ourselves. I think sometimes you just think you are one person. We are so multifaceted. And to have hair be part of that equation, and to do it healthily and easily and in a way that helps us even evolve and grow. You also said we're different. Maybe I want one phase of it to be straight, and another phase I can do it. I don't have to choose one path.
That's right.
So thank you so much, Arthur. This has been amazing.
And if you're listening and you're curious about taking the plunge into entrepreneurship, remember this: it's not just about coffers or faith. It's about passion, finding your support, understanding the rhythm you're built for. This journey, it will test you, challenge you, it will push you, but it will also show you what you're capable of if you take it one step at a time, with intention and with rest.
Now make sure you subscribe to Evolve Voices, this leading and incredible project where our ambassadors are interviewing amazing professionals from all over the world so they can share their perspective and benefit you with their perspective, their knowledge, and you can understand what's happening in the different markets. Evolve Voices is a project part of the Evolve Commerce Club, the #1 and leading community where we connect international professionals in the world of commerce. We are now connecting professionals in more than 40 markets, and every week we invite an expert to share their perspective and their knowledge. So if you'd like to know more, you can always look at the comments. We have a link there so you can request your application, and stay tuned for the next episode. Thanks for watching. All the best. Ciao.